Well, hello everyone. I hope you're having a great day today. It is so good to be with you. Welcome to Tuesday's edition of Take 5. The subject we're dealing with this week is called the sacrifice of excellence. We're just kind of expanding this subject from last week there. And what we're trying to understand is that as believers, we should be moved to serve and worship and work for God with all the excellence we can muster, because our Father is excellent in everything that He does and in everything that He is. And so we don't pursue excellence for our own name's sake. It has nothing to do with us. We pursue excellence because the name of the Lord is great and He is worthy of us giving Him our very best. Our text comes from Malachi chapter 1, and last week we read that and we talked about God's frustration with Israel and the priests because of bringing, second-rate and half-hearted sacrifices. Malachi 1:14, he said, "Cursed be the cheater who has a proper male sacrifice in his flock, and he vows it, yet he sacrifices to the Lord what is blemished." In other words, cursed be the cheater who has something better, but he brings God something less. Because he says, "I am a great king, and my name will be feared among the nations." So because of the greatness of God, because of the excellence of His name, because of the excellence of what He has done for you and I, we should give God the very best that we have. We're supposed to bring Him a sacrifice of excellence. Now, that's this whole week, that's kind of the concept I want us to grasp, is that make sure that we understand that what we bring to God, how we serve Him on a daily basis, how we serve Him as we worship on Sunday or whenever we gather, and everything else that we do for the kingdom, our giving, our witnessing, the integrity of our daily lives, all of that is supposed to be a sacrifice. And then if it is a sacrifice, God expects it to be one of excellence, the very best that we have. And so that's where I want our focus to be, is to make sure that we realize that we are still sacrificing for God. We're still giving up something so that we can bring Him our very best. Now, I guess really the best way to understand it, since we're reading from Malachi 1 and how God was aggravated with Israel and those priests there, is to go back and kind of look at that sacrificial system and what God demanded out of His people when it come to that area of sacrifices. The priests of the Old Testament were to offer annual, monthly, weekly, and then daily sacrifices. The children of Israel had to provide these sacrifices, but the priests were to offer them up to God. So there were 6 of those annual sacrifices. You'll remember, the Feast of Passover, unleavened bread, Pentecost, trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and then the Feast of Tabernacles. These 6 annual sacrifices and feasts were to remind Israel of their religious duty of honoring God these 6 times a year. And it was all to commemorate God's hand of blessing and deliverance and provision upon them throughout all their generations. And so they had these annual sacrifices they were to bring. Then there were monthly sacrifices, and this also reminded Israel of their responsibility to honor God for everything that He did for them on a monthly basis. Then there were weekly sacrifices that they brought that were to commemorate the Lord's Day on every Sabbath, so Israel could honor God one day out of every week. But then there were daily sacrifices. These were called continual burnt offerings 17 times in the book of Numbers alone. And these sacrifices were offered up 2 times a day, every single day at 9 in the morning and 3 in the evening. Now I want to say something about all these sacrifices real quick. We discovered they're annual and monthly and weekly and then daily. Well, as far as coming together to worship in the house of the Lord, you can really still see people that follow that pattern. You find people that only come, a couple of times a year. That's all they can sacrifice to God. And then you find people that come, maybe once or twice a month. That's all they give to God. Then you find those people that come weekly. They come every Sunday and they're there. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that I'm about to, brag on these people. I'm really not. Because if that is the extent of your sacrifice to God, is giving Him one day a week, then that's really not much sacrifice. What we are pressing for is that daily sacrifice, that continual burnt offering that God required out of Israel. That's what we are pushing for, because God deserves our best every day, not just Sunday, not just once a month, not just a couple of times a year, maybe at Easter and Christmas or Mother's Day or something like that. God deserves our best every single day. So this is not just about, you giving up a little bit of your time to come to the Lord's house. You ought to do that. That's something we should definitely do. But this idea of giving God excellence and giving Him our best, it is something that has to happen every single day of our life. Each of these sacrifices that they were to bring for the continual or the daily burnt offerings were to consist of a spotless lamb, 7 pints of flour that were mixed with 1.5 quarts of crushed olive oil and 1.5 quarts of strong wine. And all of that was to remind Israel of what God had done for them. They were called continual burnt offerings because they represent what is supposed to be a continual lifestyle of worship and thanksgiving and religious living. Not just a weekly, not just a monthly, not just an annually, but a continual, a daily lifestyle of honoring God with our life, with everything that we are, with everything that we have, with everything that we can do. That's what God expects each and every day. A continual burnt offering, a daily sacrifice. It is the sacrifice of excellence every single day. Now, when the time would come around for these annual or the monthly or the weekly sacrifices, Israel was commanded to offer the daily sacrifice along with the other, meaning that God wanted them to never stop that daily recognition of Him and everything that He had done for them. He wanted those people to give Him their very best each and every day. And that's what He wants out of us today, is for us to do the same thing. Now, there were some that only brought that annual. There were some that only brought the monthly. There were some that only brought the weekly. But God didn't want that. God's heart was in that daily, continual sacrifice, because God wants to know that people are in love with Him every day. So what He wants is that daily, continual commitment where people pour out their honor and the worship that He deserves, and they do it with the content of their hearts and their thoughts and their actions and their words. This is the sacrifice of excellence that God demands, expects, and wants each and every day of our life. Well, hey, I got to get out of here. It's been good being with you. I look forward to being with you tomorrow on Wednesday's edition of Take 5. Till then, God bless you. Have a great day. Remember, friend, trust the Lord. He will never fail you.